Joining me now, CNN political commentator S.E. Cupp and former Obama 2012 press secretary Ben LaBolt. S.E., let me start with you. In an interview with the Associated Press, Terry Sullivan, who's the campaign manager for Marco Rubio, said the Republicans might not have a nominee until May, and he even talked about possibly a brokered convention. Rubio was asked about that today. He said, I don't think it is necessarily negative to have a brokered convention. Possible?
Yeah, before New Hampshire and Iowa, before this race started, time was everyone's enemy, right? The RNC, Republicans were of the mindset, we want this process to be as quick as possible because the longer it goes on, the more damaging it is. Now that Trump has really sort of like blown this up, time is everyone's best friend. We want more time. We need more time. And so I get why Rubio and other candidates are now thinking, well, maybe it wouldn't be so bad to let this go on a little bit longer.
Interesting. And now Democrats are talking about it, too. Take a listen to this interview with the Senate Democratic leader, Harry Reid. He was asked about how long this might go on by our own Manu Raju. Take a listen.
We have had these races go on for a long, long time. So certainly no one can say there haven't been enough debates.
Do you think there's any possibility that we could be going into a Democratic convention without a consensus nominee?
I don't know, but it'd be kind of fun.
I mean, is it possible for a brokered convention?
Sure. I seriously, some of the old conventions produce some pretty good people.
Harry Reid longing along for the days of Estes Kefauver versus Adlai Stevenson there. But do you think this is possible, Ben, a brokered convention on the Democratic side?
Look, it's possible in some universe, but I think it's very unlikely. The Clinton campaign sent a memo this week saying they expect to have this wrapped up in March. I think the Sanders campaign does have the benefit of some small dollar fundraising and the potential to perform well in caucus states where activists determine the results. But as we get to these bigger states and big primary votes with diverse populations, I think that'll favor the Clinton campaign and favor it pretty quickly.
S.E., I want to play a little bit more of the Ted Cruz ad that is playing in South Carolina against Marco Rubio. We saw a little glimpse of it in Sunland's piece, but let's watch a little bit more of it.
I voted for a guy who was a Tea Party hero on the campaign trail, and then he went to D.C. and played patty cake with Chuck Schumer and cut a deal on amnesty.
Does that make you angry?
Angry? Makes me feel dumb for trusting him.
Maybe you should vote for more than just a pretty face next time.
You guys have room for one more?
That's a pretty negative ad.
That's a negative, just a pretty face. That's a pretty negative ad. Yeah. Look, Ted Cruz, the fight was always supposed to be between Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio. And again, Trump and 18 other candidates really sort of threw a wrench into that. So now I think those two in particular are finally starting to train their eyes back on each other and try to draw out those more substantive differences between their policies or their faces.
You know, Donald Trump had an ad attacking Ted Cruz. It was vicious.
Yeah.
He pulled it. What do you think's going on there?
Yeah. Remember when Sears in the 90s unveiled that new campaign, Come See the Softer Side of Sears?
I do not, but I'm not
well, you're too young. You're too young to remember. But no, it's a little too late to come see the softer side of Donald Trump. I know that Corey Lewandowski, his campaign guy, thought that, you know, the softer side of Donald Trump after New Hampshire was a real winner. And that's true. I like the softer side of Donald Trump, but I think it's pretty baked in that Donald Trump is a rough guy. So I think it's a little late to start pulling negative ads and hopes that South Carolina voters see Donald Trump as a softie.
Ben, yesterday Jay Carney, former White House press secretary, said that he thinks it's pretty clear that President Obama supports Hillary Clinton. You worked at the White House. Is that fair?
Look, I don't think the president's going to make an endorsement
that's not what
in
I'm
the
asking
race,
about.
but I think that the governing style of Secretary Clinton and her vision is more similar to President Obama's. President Obama's a pragmatist. He's a progressive, but he's a pragmatist who always believed in reaching across the aisle to get things done.
And your buddy Bill Burton said that he thinks it's a mistake that Bernie Sanders is so directly running against the Obama presidency.
Well, today Bernie Sanders said that he'd close the leadership gap between the president and the American people. I think a lot of Democrats were offended and surprised by that statement. We all thought there was a lot of leadership demonstrated when he pulled us back from the brink of another depression, for example.
All right, so you agree it might be a mistake for Bernie Sanders to run against the Obama record to a degree.
Well, look, President Obama's numbers among Democrats are about 90%. And part of his critique here, bringing a revolution, that's a revolution after 8 years of a Democrat in office. So in some ways, it's a bizarre message to have during a primary with a popular president.
Essie, just quickly, if you could. Ted Cruz is out there saying Iowa's weighed in, New Hampshire's weighed in. Now it's a two-man race. You know, I kind of see his point. Do you disagree?
Well, in that Iowa picked one person and New Hampshire picked another person.
Just that it's kind of hard to see any of the other guys getting in there.
Well, I don't know. I mean, if you look, if you think there's no room for an establishment candidate, then that wouldn't explain why John Kasich did so well in New Hampshire. I think, you know,
Trump still did twice as well as he did.
Sure, but it's not a majority yet. He hasn't been able to really solidify a majority of support. So while the other Republican voters, 70% of whom are still shopping for a candidate, you know, there's still quite a few choices, and I think it's a little bit of sensory overload. Once the field starts to winnow, I think you're going to see someone like Kasich, someone like Jeb, or someone like Rubio emerge to take on a Ted Cruz or a Donald Trump.
That's what you're hoping for anyway.
Well, that's what I think will happen.
All right, Essie Cub, Ben LeBeau, thank you so much.